Today on the Nerdy Gritty, with the passing of Stan Lee, we take a look at what got us into comic books.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Nerdy Gritty, where we delve deep into the details of pop culture. I am Dez.
And I'm Fox.
Fox, what would you say is the esports equivalent of taking your ball and going home?
I mean, I would just say, I would just say like rage quitting, but that's not the equivalent of taking the ball and going home.
And like just taking everything and leaving.
Right, like making it so they can't play anymore.
Right.
I don't know, is that a thing?
Did you know that...
Is that a Fallout 76 thing?
The Overwatch League has minor leagues.
I love it. Yeah. That's awesome.
So the Overwatch League has minor leagues.
Got a farm team for my Overwatch team.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great.
There was an entire farm league called the Toronto... Oh man, I gotta pull up the article.
Toronto Overwatchers.
The
Toronto Maple Leafs. The Toronto Canadiens.
No, stop it.
The Toronto
Contenders.
Oh, okay.
The Toronto Contenders.
That's a pretty good name.
Yeah, they were the Toronto Contenders. But there is also a professional team called the Toronto Defiant.
Okay.
So the Toronto Contenders are a minor league organization.
Yes.
And the Toronto Defiant are the professional organization.
Okay.
So, the organization, the Toronto Contenders, exists and exists on Twitter, and at one point challenged the Toronto Defiant to just a for fun match.
Right.
And the Defiant just ignored them.
Well, they're called the Defiant, so...
That's fair, yeah. So, after that, the Contenders started smack talking.
Of course.
And then a couple of, like, not the Defiant, but a couple of the other Overwatch teams were like, hey guys, can you not be douchebags?
Stop it.
That's basically it. Like, they just, in the nicest way possible, like, hey, your smack talking isn't actually what we want people to think of Overwatch.
Right.
Overwatch League. Like, we want to be a professional
We want to change the image of video game community.
And then after that, the Toronto Defiant, paid for exclusive rights to the name Toronto in the Overwatch League.
Wow.
So the Contenders couldn't be the Toronto Contenders
anymore. They couldn't have their... Nah, that's petty.
So they quit. The Toronto Contenders said,
they just quit?
We're done. We don't exist anymore. We're disbanding.
My interest in being a professional Overwatcher was contingent on the fact that I could be on a team that has Toronto in the name. And
so they're done. Meanwhile, everybody in this minor league is like, wait, what?
What?
I'm still playing.
Yeah.
Like, wait, what?
I mean, you get a bye week now because somebody got seeded. Got one less team, so.
So, thankfully, technically the Overwatch League, all of the contracts of the minor league is still through the Overwatch League. So the Overwatch League is like, look, guys, you're going to have a team. You're going to play. We just don't know with who right now because your league doesn't exist right now.
Man.
So.
That's rough, you know? They could have been contenders.
They could have been a contender.
They could have been the contenders.
Marlon Brando was on the team.
Right, he was.
Yeah.
He rose from the grave.
It smelled really bad.
Yeah, he was bad. But Mercy came in and rezzed him.
Yeah. They have a star quality Mercy player.
It transfers to real life.
You're watching
the greatest cosplayer ever.
You're watching the screen of this Mercy player, and they go through a door you didn't know was there, and they're just in a graveyard.
They're in real life now.
Marlon Brando, we need your help. And I guess there was a lot more talk that wasn't public that went back and forth.
Oh, I'm sure
right.
That's funny.
At the end of the day, they're just the Contenders. They're not the Toronto Contenders.
Right. They're now just the Contenders. At the end of the day,
the Contenders said, "I don't want to contend anymore. I quit." And
that's weird.
The most petty move imaginable. No,
I don't wanna.
So
that's funny.
Yeah.
Well, yep. Okay.
Esports.
It's interesting.
How are you, man? What's going on with you?
I've been into a lot lately. Man, this year has been Game Central.
Yeah.
Just packed. Video games, if you've been into video games for a long time, like both of us have, there have always been good games. Always.
Right.
Of course. And I don't know, I just want to say that, I don't know if I'm right here, I might just be exaggerating, but it just feels like these last couple of years have just been the freaking golden age.
Like a resurgence of a golden age of gaming.
Right, because you can, man, there's just been so many, this year alone, they released, we want to talk about this probably next week or a week after at the most, but the Game Awards are coming up, and they've released nominees, which is surprising to me. I don't know why the Game Awards happen in December 6th. Like, that's literally the day that Smash Brothers comes out, so Smash Brothers can't be on it. It has to wait till next year.
But
right, but it's weird to me that it just feels to me that it should be mid-January.
Right, but at the same time...
Like the Oscars.
I'm pretty sure...
Or February.
I'm pretty sure Smash Brothers isn't concerned about...
No, I understand that. It's just weird to me that the 2018 Game Awards happen in 2018.
Yeah, that is weird.
Why? Anyway, so we'll talk about that.
Especially because, like, the big Black Friday, because if they already released nominees now, all the holiday games aren't on the docket.
Super Smash Brothers can't be. Fallout 76 can't be.
Which it sounds like it's not going to be.
It's probably not going to be. Look, I'm actually pretty excited about it. Like, I like the idea of being. I think the idea. This is a thing I want to talk about a lot, but
okay.
I think the idea of me being a lone survivor and occasionally meeting up with other people in a sparsely populated post-apocalyptic world is a cool idea. And I would love it if they added, like, because there's no NPCs in the game.
Right.
No human NPCs.
Right.
And I like that idea because logically this is the first vault to open, and so there wouldn't be.
Yeah, you are the
But I
human
really
NPC.
love the idea of them continuing to add content, so in a few months, logically in the world, more people would have walked out of the vaults and come into the world, and so now there are NPCs. And, like, that just seems to be smart to me. But anyway, that's the whole thing I want to talk about, too.
I see it going the way of Pokemon Go, where at the very beginning it's going to be so big, and then it's going to fall really fast.
And then it's just going to,
and then
they'll start
then
adding
they're going to add
it.
Content fast.
Yes.
And when they add content fast, it'll level out.
Yeah.
And
Bethesda is the king of vision.
Right.
And making that happen. So I think they're going to... Anyway, they've had so many games...
As Vision.
Right, yes. So many games have come out recently that it's just like, I want to talk about all of them. I want to talk about how I have now Platinum Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And it was incredible.
I've
been playing Red Dead Redemption 2. It's also incredible. Possibly my game of the year.
Although, I haven't played any of it or seen any of it other than bug videos.
Oh,
and
we're
they're
sure.
the funnest
yeah,
thing to
no, they're
watch.
great. Yeah, I mean, you can't have a game that big.
Right, absolutely.
And varied. Yeah, anyway.
QA in a game of that size.
Right, it's impossible.
Madness.
Yeah, you have to, it's got to be an ongoing process.
Be bugs. Yeah.
Right. But Red Dead Redemption 2 is possibly my game of the year, only maybe tied with... As of right now, it's still God of War. But that could
God of War was also very,
that could
very
take
good.
it on. Spyro came out yesterday, which is fine.
Game of the year.
Red Dead Redemption 2 is garbage. No, it's fun. It's a great nostalgia trip. Like, they've done a really good job. I talked about this in one of the episodes I recorded. I really hope it, like with Crash Bandicoot, I really hope it leads to making a new game, like a new Spyro. Because it just, like, the whole taking the time to remaster such an old game is fun for nostalgia, but there's not a lot to the game. It's not a very, compared to today's standards, there's not a lot of depth there.
Like a new Skylanders game? Or
No, I want a new
game?
Spyro, like, 3D platformer kind of game.
Okay, but I want it made by, like, Rockstar. And I want Spyro to be a real dragon. Or maybe Bethesda.
An actual, like, yeah, you play as Alduin.
Yeah, no. Spyro.
Spyroduin.
Yeah.
It's Skyrim, but you play as Alduin.
As the dragons.
Yeah, the World Ender, or whatever his name is. Yeah, I've just been into so much that it's been overwhelming game-wise.
Have you been spending time with your wife?
Who?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I remember her.
I forgot about her.
No, I actually went to Indiana this weekend. And
is she going to be in the patch?
I think they're going to add her as an NPC in Fallout 76. No, I went to Indiana this weekend and saw lots of family, so that was fun. But it also, the whole time I was just like, I want to be a cowboy. Yeah. I want to play Red Dead Redemption.
I'm not moseying anywhere right now.
I need to lasso a bandito. I can't
or just
do
a
it.
bandit.
No.
Oh.
No. No, not that.
I have suddenly just come upon a game series called The Room. I guess they started as mobile games.
Okay.
They just released on Steam, but it came out as a mobile game in 2015.
Wow.
Yeah, so I don't know what took them so long, jerks. But
Okay.
anyway, so literally I was like, what do I want to play? What do I want to play? Well, what's on sale right now? This looks kind of creepy, and it's $1.50. I'm gonna try The Room.
There you go.
And so it's an atmospheric kind of Lovecraftian puzzle game in which the first one is there's just a box and that's it. And
you're like, what's in the box?
no, well, I mean, yes, I did say that at one
Brad
point.
Pitt shows up.
But actually, I referenced Emperor's New Groove because in that box was another box.
Okay.
And so the first episode is actually called Smash It with a Hammer. So... No, so the boxes keep pulling boxes out of other boxes, but then you solve that puzzle.
Okay.
And the box is kind of grows, it's all spatially unreasonable.
Okay.
And the whole thing is because there's this element called the null, and the null defies space and time.
Okay.
And so you're solving these puzzles, and finally you want to get to the middle, and when you get to the middle, a door opens to another realm.
Ooh.
And you go into this other realm, and you're all following AS, whoever AS is. You're following this person,
Alan
and
Smithy.
They're leaving you notes. From the very beginning, I called him my uncle, and he was just my uncle after that.
That's weird.
There was nothing in the game that is
Did you know that Alan Smithy? That was the name I came up with, but Alan Smithy is the name that when a director makes a movie that is so terrible that he wants nothing to do with it, they say it's directed by Alan Smithy.
Really?
True story. It's a thing. Look it up on Wikipedia.
I will do that. I'm curious. I want to see what movies.
I think it's Hellraiser 4 is
Alan
Smithy. There's I mean, none of them are mainstream,
right.
But yeah, there's lots. Anyway,
The Room 2 is you're in this other realm,
right?
And now you're mostly defying time. So you open doors at the end of each chapter. So the first chapter, you're on an old galleon.
Cool.
A pirate type ship.
Sure.
Then you open a door in the galleon, you walk through, and you're in ancient Egypt. And then this one is now you're in a whole room, and there's 3 or 4 puzzles, if not more, in this entire room. So the third one comes out, and of course they went from a box, then they went to a room, and the third one they went to several rooms for each chapter and each puzzle.
Oh.
That was a bit much.
Oh yeah.
Because for me, if I have to solve one puzzle to get a piece to another puzzle, and I walk all the way back to 3 rooms back, and then I put that puzzle piece in, and it solves a puzzle, and it kicks out another piece, and I take that piece, and I have to walk all the way back to that first room, and it really
it's called content.
That one was a
walking.
little bit, yeah, exactly. That one, there was a little bit of a removal from immersion in that because there was a lot of just wandering.
Yeah, not the best.
But
use of space.
I definitely did I felt like Dumb and Dumber, not Jim Carrey, who's the other one?
Dumber.
Yes. Not Dan Floyd. Dang it, I can't remember his name.
Daniel something.
Anyway, his character when he looks at Jim Carrey is like, well, just when I thought you couldn't be any stupider. You go and do something like this. And
totally redeem yourself.
I did exactly. So I finished this game and I'm like, man, that one was a little bit more disappointing. It was too big.
Jeff Daniels.
And then Jeff Daniels, thank you. And Dan, that's where it
is.
Yep. So Jeff Daniels. So anyway, it ends, and the guy who I've been following him, the craftsman in this one, I'm following the craftsman. He's like, oh, you thought that you were following me, but really you're just a prisoner.
Oh, snap.
And you see this box close around, so you end up in a train, and it pans back, and the train is going through a labyrinth, and it pans back, and that labyrinth is on a world, and then it pans back, and that world is in a cube, and it pans back,
this is
and
ridiculous.
And it's the craftsman, and he puts the cube on a table, and tendrils come out of one of the doorways, grab the cube, and just pull it in. And then it goes to screen, and it's like, you got the prisoner ending. There are puzzles that you didn't know were there that you didn't solve. if you can go find those, you can get other endings. And I'm like, oh, okay, fine, I'm gonna do that.
I'm gonna do that.
Then.
This game is stupid, but I'm gonna do it.
So, when like I found pieces to those puzzles, I found things. I'm like, what is this?
You didn't use
I'm
them,
not
though?
using it.
Yeah.
Look, I found a thing here, and I solved this puzzle, but it doesn't do me anything. That's weird. And like, I found things, and oh no, I really want to.
That sounds cool.
So yeah, it was very
Congrats.
cool.
One last thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I watched a movie called Beautiful Boy. It's about me.
It's about Griffin McElroy.
He's the beautiful boy. No, that'd be great. No, it's actually the opposite of fun, in a good way. It's Steve Carell is a father and has a son, Nick Sheff. This is based on 2 books. One written by the one written by the son, one written by the father.
Are these nonfiction books?
These are nonfiction books.
Okay.
It's about Nick Sheff's addiction. He struggles with
and that's
addiction.
The son?
The son, yes.
Yeah.
And it's about the father and his relationship, and it's about his trying to overcome his addiction. It was very, very good. Was in no way exploitative.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't, and by that I mean like there was a movie called, I don't know if you've seen Requiem for a Dream.
I haven't seen it. I know of it though.
It's also about basically heroin addiction, but very exaggerated and very look at all the evil things that will happen and life is terrible.
Right.
And not saying that that's not true. Those things happen, but it was so exaggerated to the point where it felt unrealistic and it kind of felt like a fantasy version of what would happen. This was mostly about the father's struggle with dealing with his son like this. Because at the same time wanting to be angry about this kid being stupid and doing all these stupid things, and also loving his son,
right?
Unconditionally.
Yeah, just wanting to
and feeling like he has failed. Like it did a very good job at showing that it's not just a simple you did a bad thing so you're a bad person.
Yeah.
That addiction is a mental health, like addiction itself is a health problem. Not just the problems that what you're addicted to brings, but addiction itself is an issue. And so it did a very good job at talking about that. It was Steve Carell, who was Michael in The Office. I still have the issue a little bit. I mean, he's mostly done dramatic roles now.
Right.
And so I'm pretty used to seeing him, but anytime he yells, it just brings me back to him screaming about nonsense things in The Office, and just that tone he hits when he yells.
I declare
yes
bankruptcy.
Exactly. But when it's him yelling at his son, you did this to yourself. What am I supposed to do? It just makes me think of even though it's the most dramatic, that's on me. That's just his.
Right.
But there was one thing that was a very strange choice. In The Office, Holly is his love interest, the one that he actually ends up with in the end.
Mm-hmm. Spoiler alert.
Right. You're the only one who doesn't know that. Played by Amy Ryan, I believe her name is. Well, she's in this movie too, as his ex-wife. And it was just the worst. It made me... I have never been ejected from a movie from the fictional universe so quickly as, oh, this is Michael Scott and Amy's and Holly's this. I just created this universe now where this is they had a son, he's addicted now, and I am no longer paying attention to this movie.
It's post-office.
Yes, this is a post-office movie. Michael Scott got his crap together and now writes for Rolling Stone. All these things happen. That was. Look, obviously, I have to get past that too as the audience, but also It just felt so
it's one of the most
why did you make that choice?
In recent history.
She did a great job. She's a fine actress, but they had to know that would happen for the vast majority of their audience.
I wonder if it was produced or directed by Michael Scott.
Yeah, Michael Scott.
By Steve
this
Carell.
Is Threat Level Midnight 2.
By Steve Carell, and he
it's very
was
possible
going for actors, somebody
that they know or somebody they have a good chemistry with.
Good actress,
yeah, absolutely. But all that being said, excellent movie. I could see it being nominated for Best Picture or something. It seems like that kind of movie.
A
I don't
lot
think
of
it
the
should win,
movies
but
that are like really good in that way these days are ones that don't focus on like overdoing things. Like Lady Bird recently
yes,
was such a good movie
right.
because of its realism.
Yeah,
like,
it just felt
it seemed so natural.
Yeah, there was a strong like. There's always a possibility of this movie. There was a real like. I feel like there was a temptation in writing it to make it about opioids specifically,
right?
And about like the healthcare industry, But no, I mean, it talked specifically about crystal meth. It talked specifically about other things, but it was never about like, here's all the evils in the world. It was just about a kid who got into a cycle and is having a very hard time breaking out of it, and his father doing all he can to help, but feeling powerless to do so.
Man,
it was very good.
That's good.
It was a tearjerker.
Sounds really good.
Yeah,
Man.
So worth watching.
Well, speaking of tearjerkers, we have a topic that we're going to be talking about today because of an incredibly, incredibly important man that just did amazing things, that created worlds that we have enjoyed exploring for a long, long time. The passing of Stan Lee happened recently. As you're listening to this, about a week and a half ago.
Was it a week and a half? I thought it was Monday.
As they're listening
listening to it. Oh, you're right.
It'll be
I'm
about,
so sorry.
I guess,
it's a week ago. Okay, yeah, you're right. So I always forget about that.
We are live broadcasting this.
Yes, we are. Hello, millions.
So, but he was real old.
He was, okay. He was. Yeah. If you don't know, here's some basic things. He was
95.
Well, no, you know what? Yes, he was 95. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stop. We're going to go through some trivia about Stan Lee to get this will serve a purpose of showing how stupid you are, and also, which is very important to me,
to show anybody. They know.
We know.
They're aware.
No, but also just kind of getting to know him a little better, because most people just know him as Cameo Man.
Yeah.
And, they know he wrote comic books and created these characters. But, so, I'm going to start at the very beginning. These are various trivia questions about Stan Lee that I came up with based on his
Stanley
Wikipedia
Martin
page.
Lieber.
Did you read that? Or did you look it up earlier?
No. I know that off the top of my head.
That was my first question, of course. What is his real name?
Yeah.
Stanley Martin
Lieber. And
I always thought it was weird when I was younger. I was like, his name is Stan Lee? Stan is short for Stanley. Is his name Stanley Lee? Apparently it's not. It's Stanley Martin Lieber.
Yeah. He came over in the war, didn't he?
Hold on. We got this. I got questions.
I'm sorry.
I got a question. So, he was born in 1922.
Right.
95 years old when he died.
Right.
Where was he born?
I want to say that he was born in Poland.
He was born in Manhattan.
Was he really?
He's an American.
I didn't know that.
Everything he writes is set in Manhattan, New York?
Yeah, I always thought that was because that was the place that he moved there. He came over.
Okay, I could see that makes sense.
I mean, his name was Stanley Lieber.
Okay, sure.
Yeah,
he was born in Manhattan.
All right.
I think I read somewhere on 95th Street or something like that. I don't know. Yeah. So, all right. He did, however, he was in the military during World War II. He was not, as far as I could tell, he was not involved in combat. Okay. Here's
how old would he have been at the time? I guess he would have been
22. He was 21.
Yeah.
I think when he enlisted, because World War II ended in 45. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. All right, so he was all of this might be. This is what I found. There might be details that I'm getting wrong, but there were two different, basically, jobs he had in the military.
Okay.
What were they?
He was.
One of them's more obvious, I think, than the other.
A cartographer.
A cartographer? A mapist?
Yeah.
No, he was not.
I was drawing.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, I can see that.
Then he listened to radar stuff.
No, okay. This is an unfair question.
Yep.
How would you know this? This isn't. The first one, he was part of the Signal Corps, which basically repaired like radio towers and whatnot.
Okay.
The other one, which I thought was a little more obvious, and there's some details to it, he was part of the training film division. He created training films.
Oh.
Which actually gives a little bit of a what do you call it? Some more fun to that scene in Spider-Man Homecoming, where you see that like it's not a training video for the military,
Oh, no,
but it's
one
the
with
Captain America,
like,
video from the from
so
the
you
40s.
got detention.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's what Stan Lee basically did with the military. Specifically, he was what was he? He said he described himself as having the title of playwright for the military. One of apparently 9 people who had that. Like, it's a very specific role. Okay. So then, after he came out of the military in 1945, let's see. He got into cartooning.
Yep.
So, we're going to talk about Marvel. He was a big part of Marvel. What was Marvel? I guess so. What was Marvel? Marvel was not originally Marvel Comics. What was it called before that?
Oh my gosh, I do know this.
Then what's the answer? You clearly don't know this, you liar.
You're gonna say it, and I'm gonna be like, yes,
100%. Yep.
Okay, it was Gasoline Alley.
Gasoline Alley Comics?
That's like a comic, a Sunday morning comic, like an ancient Sunday morning comic.
Timely Comics.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Originally called Timely Comics, they eventually became Atlas, or known as Atlas Comics. And then in 1961, became Marvel, like officially branded as Marvel Comics. Okay, so a few things about what he did. Number of characters.
Oh,
so this is based on a list on Wikipedia, which I looked at it. I looked at it and saw the number of things. Not all of them were specifically characters. One of them was like the Daily Bugle, basically.
Okay,
so this is not just characters,
but almost a character
important things that he created.
Okay. You just give me a higher or lower. 100.
Higher.
300.
Higher.
500.
Less.
400.
Less.
350.
362. Things that are important enough to have their own Wikipedia page.
That is outrageous.
Yes. Right. Some of them are ridiculous. He created the Governator, which was Arnold Schwarzenegger as a superhero, as the governor of California.
Yes.
But obviously a lot of them were Iron Man and Spider-Man and Fantastic Four and the Hulk.
Yeah.
And I could just continue forever. Yeah, he did not stop creating, basically.
Right.
He always just created something new.
Oh my gosh, I saw a video on Twitter that was Todd McFarlane and I want to say Andy Kubert. I may be making that anyway, but it was like 90s.
And Andy Kubert is a guy.
Well, I know that, but
okay.
I don't know if it was him. But it was 90s artists, popular 90s artists.
Right.
And they were tasked 20 minutes, create a comic book character, go. And they're like, all right, we're going to name this guy Overkill.
Oh, so 90s.
And it's like so gritty.
I think that's a Venom character.
And Stan Lee is there like, all right, I mean, what is he wearing? I mean, okay, sure, there's your character. How is he going to walk? And no, you've got wires hanging in front of. How is he going to walk? What is this guy's backstory? What does he take that off at the end of the day and go to sleep, or does he wear that? Like he's just roasting.
You're bad at this.
Oh my gosh! Like they are like this total like 90s genre artists.
Yeah.
That are trying to be 90s genre artists, and Stan Lee is there like you have no lasting.
Guys,
power.
just pick an animal.
Yeah, like. Like you're bad at this, guys.
That's awesome.
And it's great.
Yeah.
Just roasting them.
So yeah, 362 important things, including some things that are not actually characters. Okay, what was his favorite? He talked about this multiple times. Yeah, Spider-Man.
Yeah,
that's an easy one.
Yeah, he loves Spider-Man.
Everybody loves Spider-Man. Is probably the number 2 favorite character. Like I'll say that people's favorite. Second favorite character. It's like I think English is the second most learned language. I'm guessing that Spider-Man is probably. That's a complete guess, but Spider-Man's awesome. Everybody else is going to be like Superman or Batman or whatever.
Yeah.
But Spider-Man's the coolest.
So are you saying he's the most common second favorite
character?
That
is my theory. That is my theory because he's so lovable.
The Spider-Man game did a really good job of that.
The new one?
There've
been lots of them.
Peter Parker such a good guy.
Yeah, like a real person and a nice person. And
but a good person. Yeah. Like and not like unflappable hero, like flawed and like wanting to do what's right, but sometimes just being exhausted
Right.
or not getting there in time
Right.
and hating himself for it. Like, but at the same time, just like, yeah, I know I could work at Oscorp for hundreds of thousands of dollars, but Dr. Octavius, like, these prosthetics you're
Right.
making are incredible.
Right.
And I believe in what you're doing.
Right.
And it's so important to me.
It was a very good.
Oh, they made him such a good character.
Right.
I loved Peter Parker in that game.
Okay, let's see.
Anyway, go ahead.
I have one more.
Okay.
How many? Okay, this is specifically Marvel movies. How many cameos has he had?
So this does not include...
Live action cameos in Marvel movies.
Okay, so this does not include the Teen Titans Go cameo.
Nope, nor does it include...
I love that cameo.
Nor does it include Deadpool 2, where he's just like a piece of graffiti art.
Right, yeah.
Or any of the TV shows, of which he's in multiple.
Yeah, he is in a ton of those.
Yeah, so
specifically Marvel movies.
Yes, which is not Marvel
30.
Cinematic Universe, Marvel branded.
Right, 30.
34.
34. Man.
That does not include the 2 that he's already filmed. He's going to be in both Captain Marvel and Avengers 4. Because
so good.
I was learning about it, he wasn't a big fan of flying toward later in his life, and so they would intentionally film them back to back, basically. As when they were filming on similar lots, which they usually would be in Atlanta, they would just schedule his cameos to be filmed on the same day.
Right.
So at the same time as filming his for Ant-Man and the Wasp, he was filming for Captain Marvel and Avengers 4. So they've already got him in the can. You know what's going to break everybody?
And then he's like, let me out of this can.
Yep. That was his cameo. More like cameo. Anyway, you know what's going to break everybody in the world? At the
end of like
At the end of Avengers 4, when it just says
in memory
of Stan Lee, and it's going to be worse than Spider-Man turning to dust. Everybody in the audience will then turn to dust.
I don't want to go, Mr. Stark, and Stan Lee just like dissolves into ash and fades away. Man.
Yes, he's had 34 cameos.
He was so old.
He was, yes.
The guy, it was his time.
It was, 100%.
He was selfish.
How dare he?
No, I mean, I was reading Todd McFarlane, again, went to go see Stan Lee toward the end, like a month before he passed, and was just talking to him, like, hey man, how are you? Like, what's going on? And Stan says, I just want to go see Joan. Joan being his wife who passed from cancer.
She also had a cameo in X-Men Apocalypse.
Really?
Yeah, because it's when Apocalypse launches all these nukes, and it shows Stan Lee, like, watching them in
holding a
fear,
woman, that's
holding
right.
Joan, his wife. Yeah.
So, he just says, I just want to go see Joan.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, yeah, man, like, it was his time. And
it was his time, yeah. He was one of the busiest people in the world.
Man. Todd McFarlane reminisced about a time that he was 16 and he was in town for like a baseball thing or whatever, but in the hotel he was staying at was a Comic-Con and Stan Lee was just downstairs hanging out. And so Todd McFarlane, who at the time was just getting into comics, went downstairs and talked to Stan Lee for 7 hours. And Stan Lee talked to him for 7 hours. Like, and Todd's like, and I just remember, like, Stan doesn't remember it, and he, like, you know, when I mentioned it, he didn't remember it later, but I vividly remember it, and I'm like, I bet you he remembers it and is like, this freaking kid needs to
get away from me.
Oh my god, it's been 7
Come
hours.
Come on, Todd. Todd's one of the best names to say in an angry way.
I think we've just developed that because of Todd Howard.
Todd Howard. Come on, Todd.
Todd.
Get some NPCs in Fallout 76, Todd.
Todd.
Anyway.
So, yeah, man. But Stan Lee, his cameos were always such a joy to me.
They were.
Because he was such random characters from time to time. Like, in Deadpool, he's the DJ at a strip club. At a strip club, yeah.
Some of my favorites were when he was, like, basically, he was Hugh Hefner in the original Iron Man, and in the second Iron Man, he was who was the TV host?
Larry King.
Larry King.
And he looked just like him.
Yeah, you're like, wait a minute. Yeah, those are great.
In Spider-Man, the Andrew Garfield one, where he's like a teacher and he's got like he's
a librarian in the high school.
Yeah, and like they're fighting in the background, and he's just like, and he
Yep.
just walks out the door, doesn't know anything happens.
I think
so
the
good.
best one for me is the one that was hilarious, but also basically confirmed a fan theory when in Guardians 2, you see him talking to the Watchers,
Yeah.
and he's basically an informant for the Watchers, and even they get annoyed with how much he's like,
Oh, come on, guys.
no, guys,
You were my ride
you were
home.
my ride. That was a really great one. Yeah, that was awesome. But of course, he had cameos and everything else. He was in Spider-Man the game as the cook
bartender,
at the
yeah.
or whatever at the restaurant. He
Um,
was in you could playable character in Lego Marvel Superheroes.
Was he really?
Oh yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah, and he would I think it was you would find him basically as a direct reference. He would talk about cameos. He'd be like, "How many cameos can I have in one game?" Something like that. Yeah. So that guy was
the
awesome.
DC one, then the Teen Titans Go one, where he's like, "Hey, it's me, Stan Lee, doing my cameo."
Doing my obligatory
Wait,
cameo.
What's that? Oh, this is a DC movie? I gotta get out of here. And then later on he comes like, I don't care if it's a DC movie. I just love cameos.
I love it. I'm really expect he'll probably show up in Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse.
Man.
Yeah, that guy. Like, here's the thing. He was a regular attendee of cons where he would do
Right.
like talk to people and do pictures.
And he didn't need to be.
No.
Yeah.
He stopped doing that just, I think, 2016.
Yeah. At like 93.
Yes, like that. That is how long, like how much of a fan of the fans he was.
Right.
Like, I'm gonna keep doing this, even though I'm
Man.
a bajillion years old.
Even though I saw your grandparents born.
I talked to your great grandfather at a con like this.
But that, seriously, he
Yeah,
could have.
legitimately. Yeah.
Man. But, so, we hope you rest well, Stan. We appreciated all that you've done. With the time we have left, we're just going to talk about comics a little bit and kind of what got us into comics and how we started reading comics. So, Fox, I'll just turn it over to you first thing, man. How did you, what was the first comic you read? Do you remember? What got you into comics?
My very first comic I read, I think, was Ultimate Spider-Man. I don't know how I got. It was literally the beginning of Ultimate Spider-Man, like issue number 1, which I'm sad I don't have anymore. I don't remember how I got it. It might have been the case where this has happened to me once in recent memory, where I just got the first issue of a magazine in the mail,
Right.
which I think magazines try to do as like
you get
I
used
got
to getting
Time
it
for free for a year.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was a mistake or if they were just like, hey, maybe he'll pay for it for the second
That's happened
year.
to me with both Game Informer and IGN.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That happened to me with Time. That happened to my wife with
Entertainment Weekly.
which it actually worked because then I bought her a subscription the next year.
Yeah.
But I think that's how it happened. I think I just bought the first. Anyway, regardless, the first comic series I legitimately read, like on a monthly basis, was Ultimate Spider-Man, which it blew my mind because I was very young at the time. This
Right.
was when it came out. I was probably 10 at the oldest, maybe. But he was wearing a Thundercats t-shirt in it that I also owned.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm Spider-Man. And it was like the perfect, that was exactly what they were trying to do. And it just worked so well on me. But I also really love that. I always remember the scene where he tells Mary Jane really early on, after becoming Spider-Man, that he is Spider-Man.
Right.
And I love the scene because he's like, Mary Jane, I'm Spider-Man. And she stares at him and then just laughs for
at
an
him.
entire page.
Yeah.
And then he jumps on the ceiling and all that. And I thought it was really funny. But also it was I was just finally, why don't more superheroes do that? It was my problem with Smallville. I was like, why not tell your best friends in the world that you're Superman?
People
they will
that you
help
can confide in.
Yeah, they will help you if you need cover for something. Where were you? Oh, he was at my house.
Yeah.
Oh, good. You did anyway. So I really love that, and that basically kicked off a lifelong interest in reading comics. I still love Spider-Man to the max because he's always been, to me, the epitome of fun comic book adventures whilst being incredibly relatable to somebody young.
Yeah.
Like I was and still am consider myself to be. Like Iron Man is great. A really cool character. But his main like dramatic arc has been like dealing with alcoholism.
Right.
And things like that. And that's important. That is like a great thing to talk about, especially in a medium where people consider it to be for kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's not really something I was dealing with at the time when at the impressionable age where where people generally start reading comic books. But immediately after that scene where Spider-Man or Peter Parker tells Mary Jane that he's Spider-Man and he's like jumping up and down and climbing the walls and making all this noise. Aunt May like yells from outside, "I don't want any hanky panky in there." That is a little more relatable to a teenager.
Yeah.
When he was like, "Okay, Mom, we're not, Mom, stop it," like that kind of thing. Like that, it was perfect. And so that kind of left a lasting impression on me, and it's grown from there. And like my interest in comics has grown and evolved, and I'm really thankful that there is more than just that now.
Right.
But it wouldn't have happened without this character that was created by Stan Lee to be exactly what a teenager or a young person would see in themselves on a page. And so that was the whole kickoff. So anybody who, like my wife, if she ever feels like I'm spending too much money on comics, blame Stan Lee.
Yeah,
like it's his fault.
How dare he? I already said he was selfish. It's true. There it is right
Yep,
there.
terrible person.
Speaking of things that Stan Lee made, the X-Men are what got me into comics.
All right.
Even before, because I'm a DC guy now, particularly a Batman guy. Even before all of that, I got into the X-Men. There was a 90s X-Men cartoon, and the 90s did something that I really, really wish that more cartoons would do today. There was X-Men and Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah.
Were two cartoons that were like, hey, let's just kind of follow the comics.
Right.
And like we'll edit for content, but at the end of the day, like these are really good stories.
Yeah.
And we can tell these really good stories. And X-Men actually had like sequential episodes. Like if you watch them out of order, you might not know what's going on.
Right, which is rare for a show like that.
Within like the first 3 or 4 episodes of the show at all, like 2 or 3, like maybe even in the pilot. Might not have been the pilot, but like 2 or 3 episodes, a character dies.
Yeah.
And I was hooked. I'm like 9 or 10 years old, and I am hooked on this. And they do a really great job, this cartoon, they do a really great job of trying to kind of put it through the eyes of Jubilee, who is a teenager.
Right.
And so they're doing a lot of like, oh, Mom, Dad, I don't understand what's going on, or oh, I'm just like a lonely teenage kid. I'm like really struggling with all of this. And so I identified with that. So I really got into the X-Men cartoon, and my buddies and we would play X-Men and whatnot. Sure. And then one of my brother's friends was like, hey, when I was a kid, I was into comics for a little while. Do you want all my old X-Men comics? I was like, yes.
Yes.
And so he just comes by one day and he gives me about 20 various X-Men comics.
Whatever, yeah.
Like no sequence in them, nothing at all. And so for a while, I would just be at the store, and at this time, like Walgreens sold comic books.
Right.
Everywhere sold comic books.
Right.
And so my mom would go to the store and be like, Mom, over here, can I get a comic book? And yeah, sure, go ahead. And I would just look at the one that has the coolest cover.
Yep.
And I would flip through it, and I would, this is the one I want.
Sounds great.
And I'd read that. And so I have a ton of old X-Men and Wolverine issues that are just like whatever number.
Yeah.
It wasn't until Wolverine that I started being like, hey, if I get these in order, it tells a bigger story.
What?
And then one day I came in and there was Robin #1.
Oh, snap.
And it's like in this fancy cover. It was a first edition. And it was Tom Grummett was the artist who, I didn't know this at the time, but now I can tell you Tom Grummett also did Death of Superman.
Oh.
And so they kind of pulled the big guns to launch this new Robin comic of all things.
Yeah.
And it was Chuck Dixon and Tom Grummett, two just heavy hitters in the comic book industry. And so I see this and I'm like, a number one, that's going to be worth money someday, right? And so I'm like, this one, Mom. And then I just happened to be at the store the next week or the next month, and there was number two. And I'm like, I'm going to get this one. And I started like paying attention now. And to this day, I'm like, I think I'm 30 total issues short of owning every Robin and Red Robin comic, every single issue of Tim Drake that has ever existed. And I just got hooked with that totally naturally. But I just remember, and this again, credits Stan Lee here. Stan Lee came out with the X-Men with the goal of saying, hey, we have all these superheroes that are supposed to be these unflappable people that are like perfection. What if we had superheroes that actually kind of made us look inward?
Yeah.
And made us think about ourselves. And so he makes the X-Men with this whole idea of saying, hey, let's take a look at racism in the 60s.
Sure.
And let's see, let's make these people hate mutants just because they're mutants. There's no reason.
Right.
But also these guys are trying to be good. They're trying to be superheroes. And so he's doing a social commentary, and then carry that 30 years forward into the 90s when I'm watching this cartoon as a kid, and it's still doing a social commentary of being a teenager in a world like, the Desert Storm was going on at a time, and in a world with battles and war that you don't understand, but you're just sitting in the middle of all of this, and you're a teenager and you don't get it, but it's happening, it is. And there's this X-Men cartoon that is really helping you identify, and it's just, he did a really good job of taking, and again, Stan Lee probably didn't write the X-Men 90s cartoon, but still.
No, he did not.
No. But still, this is his creation that is just being rebirthed in a way that is so
That's one of my favorite things about comics. I often will rail against the idea of, like, it's just constantly, like, stories. That story never ends, and I like an end to the story.
Right.
But I do love the fact that comics can continually be retconned into what is relevant today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you can have a character from 1940 still be relevant today. It's one of my favorite things about comics in general is that they are 99% of them character focused.
Mm-hmm.
You don't, like, you get Guardians of the Galaxy, which can change out. You can get Avengers that you can change out. But if you're reading Spider-Man, it's about Spider-Man. It's not about New York and Spider-Man's a guy there. It's about Spider-Man and what he goes through.
Right.
And so you have and that is the most important thing in a story. And so if you're wanting to connect with a piece of art because you are a person, and like comics are a really great way to do that, especially because since they are ongoing, you can have a reboot from a 1960s character in 2018 be the same person and deal with the same things, because generally problems don't go away.
Right.
Like Iron Man's alcohol addiction in the Demon in a Bottle series from the 70s or the 80s. Like, yeah, great for that time. You know what else is a problem right now? Opioid addiction.
Yeah.
What if we created an Iron Man? It doesn't have to be Iron Man, but that issue is still alive today and can should be addressed by every single medium. And I think comics are a really great way to do that because you have these characters that have dealt with these problems before.
Yeah. Teen Titans. So again, it was because of the 60s X-Men push that that DC started looking at their stuff and saying to themselves, like, hey, we need to do this too. Like, we can do this. And so they made one of their Teen Titans a drug addict.
Yeah.
Speedy, who later became Arsenal, Roy Harper, became a heroin addict.
Right, he was the Flash's sidekick? Is that what it was?
Green Arrow.
Oh, Green Arrow, okay.
Green Arrow, yeah. I know, Speedy.
His name is Speedy.
The Flash, but no. Yeah, he was Green Arrow's sidekick, and before this, the sidekicks and the whole thing was always like, yeah, fun stuff. Going out doing cool things. But now here's this teenage boy who, it's the 70s, and drugs are going around like mad in the 70s. And I actually have a comic that I picked up that is Teen Titans going after some drug lord, but there are vignettes of a self-help group. And it's each person going around saying, hey, this is how I got into drugs. And this is why I kept doing it. And this is when I hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
And then it goes through and like vignette and then like fighting and then vignette and then fighting. And the last vignette is Speedy. And it's him saying like, I'm supposed to be a hero, but this is how I got into heroin. and going into the whole thing. And it's just like showing this ultimate weakness of a character. And again, just such a great opportunity for something that is geared toward teens to talk to teens about a real issue that they're facing.
It is happening right now with Heroes in Crisis.
Yeah, Heroes in Crisis.
Is about a shooting in a place that is supposed to be safe.
Supposed to be a safe place, yeah. And DC's doing the same kind of thing. It's like, and like action and vignette,
Yeah.
And oh my gosh.
Yeah, you have like your overarching kind of whodunit story, or I'm only one issue in. It's only one issue in right now.
Right.
Or 2 have come out. I haven't read the second one yet. But yeah, its large focus is the effect it has on the people who are involved.
Absolutely.
Not necessarily the ones there, but the people who knew the people. Like, we have all been affected in some way by a shooting. Unfortunately, that's just kind of how it is now.
Yeah.
It could be different, but that's a whole new that's a whole topic we don't get into here. But that's something that everybody is facing, and comics have that opportunity to do that. I really don't like the fact that people consider comics to be a children's toy or like like dumb, but also I love the fact that people do underestimate them. And so if somebody wants to read, oh look, a new superhero, oh, Heroes in Crisis, sounds like a fun superhero, like, you know, oh, somebody looks like somebody died, oh, I wonder who died this, oh
yeah,
this is not just about somebody dying, like
it got real.
This gets real. And I do like that idea there, or the opportunity that comics have to take advantage of the misinformed public sometimes to tell a story that is real.
And I agree with that. Yeah, comics. And again, as we wrap up here, I would give that credit to Stan Lee.
Yeah.
That he was the first one to take comics and say, hey, guys, we can be doing more with this.
Yeah.
And we can shine a light on our culture and do something more. So,
right.
Stan the man, Lazy Bones Lee.
That's what they call him.
Stumbling Stan. Like, these are all things he called himself. Like,
oh, okay.
Like, because back there was a lot of caps, like the... in comics where there's just a box and it's like what the characters are thinking.
Oh yeah.
And then there'd be like a little star, and that star would be a reference to like see issue 53.
See this issue, yeah.
And then underneath it would have who wrote that little thing.
Right.
And they would give themselves little nicknames. And Stan Lee had a ton of different little nicknames for himself. So so Stan the man, we miss you. Thank you so much for the world you've given us. Let us know what you guys think about Stan Lee, about his passing, about all the incredible work he's done, and let us know how you got into comics,
right?
And why they're important to you, if they are, or why you haven't started yet.
Right.
And we want to recommend to you something to get started with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks again for listening, guys, and remember, saved games save lives.
Bye.